I think is gonna do extremely well. I
Mm.
got blasted by it at locals. Somebody like wanted to test their OP7 build or something. I was like, ah, whatever. So yeah, this build is pretty solid because like it still plays like your standard, like like your standard Rob Lucci minus the double swing and stuff. But what
Mm.
makes this deck dangerous is like the fact that in original Rob Lucci when he came out in set 4, but now being in set 7, you have like Rebecca, which can bring out like for example the Helmeppos. Yeah, bring out the Helmeppos. I forgot to add Hina. I can't remember. Like you could either swap out Kaku for Hina or Hina for Kaku. It's really the same thing, honestly.
Mm.
But I think the only reason why you would use Kaku versus Hina is because it has a 1k counter.
I'm
But you don't
guessing the
have to
three
do that.
costs.
It's yeah, one's a -3, Hina's a -4, but it's a
Mm.
3 cost but no counter. But the Kaku 4 cost. Oh, it's a 2k counter. Shit. 2k counter and it's -3 cost.
And just so that you know, because this is all really new to a lot of people, you want to talk about the OP07 cards and what they do?
Oh yeah, so like the newest OP07 card really is in this deck is actually just the Kaku. First the Spandine, which is at the very top left at 3 cost. So the idea behind this one is you on play it, return 3 of your cards to your trash to the bottom of your deck, and you play a 4 cost from your trash rested, right? So the idea would be is you drop the 3 cost Spandine, right, into Kaku, and then you bring the Kaku 4 cost from your trash to your field rested to then -3 cost to something on the board. And depending on whatever Dom management you're at, you either use your, 4 cost Rob Lucci to wipe the whole board, or you could use Brook to KO something on the board. I mean, or Kaku 5 cost to KO something on the board. So it's all dependent on like, whatever the situation may be. But that's like the kind of combo why they only run one Spandine and then, two of those 4 cost Kakus because you just if you do have the Spandine, you basically will you could use that as a combo with like Gecko Moria, right? You drop the 8 drop Gecko Moria, and if you have a Brook on the board, one of the strats I've seen is like if you have Brook on the board, because when he swings at -1 cost, and if there's a 0 cost on the board, he KOs it. So the idea would be some people would play Gecko Moria, drop summon the Spandine to summon Kaku from the Spandine effect to and that will do a -3 cost. And then with the Gakumorio effect, you summon Helmeppo because it needs a 2 cost or less, and then that's reduces it further by another -3.
Mm.
So that's already like a good -6, right? So it's -6. Leader is a -1 effect. So if you swing with leader, that's a -1. So you can go up to 7. And then if you want to go for the 10 cost kill, then you add a Tempest Kick because you still have 2 Dawn left over, right?
Mm.
And then you KO with Brook, who's already there. Or you do your typical like combo we all are familiar with from Sakazuki. Gecko Moria into Rebecca. Rebecca summons a Hina. Gecko Moria summons a Helmeppo. Or Rebecca in this case could summon a Kaku, actually. Yeah, summon a Kaku. Or Hina, one of the two. Either of the two, really. I said oh no, 3
Three
costs. So
costs,
never
yeah.
mind. Normally then yeah, you'd play the Hina instead of the Kakus. And you do your typical combo, right? Of like your Sakazuki stuff. But what's interesting, what's actually the most dangerous thing about this deck is like it's actually those Brooks and those Ishos. So Isho is actually really hard to defend, like fight against because in the off chance, you have 6 or more cards in your hand, right? You have to trash 2, so you're down to 4 cards, and then the following turn, of course, you draw a card for 5. But that card, when you attach that one Dawn, that -3 cost just makes it so brutal
Mm.
because it just makes it so much easier to drop like Gecko Morias or use Tempest Kick. And if they have the stage, I forgot to mention the stage. Stage minuses 2 cost, right?
Mm.
And almost everything on your board is just going to be KO'd every single time. Like it's pretty nuts adding the Ishio back into the build. I've seen builds that use Isho. I've seen builds that don't use Isho, but dropping an Isho first for the setup, and then the following turn dropping your Gecko Moria, you can KO any 10 cost card on the board every single
Mm.
turn. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. And then at some point, you just get swarmed on the board with like all the stuff, and then if you don't answer that Brook, which is the most dangerous card on the board, like
Mm.
even though it needs to be a 0 cost, there's a lot of ways to cost reduction, and he just pretty much will just destroy your deck. But yeah, the only new cards really is just the Tempest Kick as well. As long as you have 10 trash or more, you draw a card. Wait, oh maybe I thought it had a draw card effect.
Yeah,
Oh
it
yeah, there it
says
is.
draw
Draw
one
one card.
card.
Yeah, there's draw one card, 10 or more trash, you minus 3 cost. So it's gonna be like essentially the new Great Eruption, but
Mm.
the only difference is you need to have 10 trash. And it works really well with Ralucci because every card he uses, Spandom searches,
Mm.
discards 3 cards back to the trash. When leader does his attacking, you minus a cost of something and you trash another 2 cards. So like you could literally within a few turns already be at minus 10 and you're ready to go for not including your counters or whatever. You're already ready to go for minus cost reduction. But yeah, this is like the similar build. I mean, the 4 Kakus, I probably would put Hina instead. So you have more options. That 4 cost Kaku, I'd probably put like Hina because you'll have more options to essentially like do more combos to KO things on the board. But yeah,
I can see why you put
so
the
there's
Kaku
that build.
though, because like it doesn't seem like you have a lot of 2Ks. You have a lot of 1K counters. So like I mean
I
I
think the
feel like you put that
idea
for that.
behind the builds having this similar kind of setup minus like you either run Isho or you don't run Isho or you run Stuzy or you don't run Stuzy, you run Kakus, you don't is I think it's more because you're at 5 life. Because back in the day in set 1 when I first started the game was really interesting back then because back then it revolved around having like 10 to 12 2K counters. But
Mm.
nowadays in set 7, 6 to 7, the standard now is like at least 8 or at most 8 2K counters total
Mm.
now. So yeah, like it's definitely switched a lot from back in the day to what it is now because like our playstyle here is a little bit more aggressive. I mean, of course, as you can see here, this is probably like a build that's somebody copied from like, the top decks and stuff. And it's also like technically more aggressive in Japan, I guess. Or actually no, we're still more aggressive players, but having 5 life, there's going to be a lot of turns, If you think of your 5 life, right, as extra cards, starting from your turn 1 and your life, you have 10 cards ready to be used at some point or another on top of your draws, right?
Mm.
So I think the idea is why not many people are starting to run less 2Ks is because of the fact that with the heavy life advantage of the 5, you have a good cushion before you have to start like, okay, let's start countering.
Mm.
It's kind of like Whitebeard, right? Like Whitebeard, why he did so well is not only is he 6K leader, but by the time he finally got down to 0 life, he had like, dude, like 15 cards in his hand, probably all counters. You know what I mean? And he only played like a few rush cards and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at this, man, just the consistency of the spandom. If your leader has CP in its type, look at the top three. With your ability to like draw cards with Tempest Kick or all the above, like I mean, maybe Rush Zoro or maybe Red is just, and maybe the R Green Law and Rush Zoro is just dead. This just seems so
Yeah,
consistent.
oh, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree.
Tempest Kiss just sounds perfect against RP Law, just because everything's 4 cost.
Because like I mean, of course you're gonna KO everything on their board, and if you play like more of a control game, you could easily just utterly demolish like a red purple law. But if the red purple law just happens to find all the cards that they need, right?
Yeah.
Like just every rush card, all the all that stuff. I mean, it's not easy to come back from that because like when they're like just constantly rushing you down, unless you're, but of course you have to be killing their stuff on the board too, right? Yeah, it's kind of difficult. I mean, there is a reason why it's like still winning pretty heavily over at
Japan?
in set 7. Well, let me even say heavily because it was like a even match between all the builds, all the different ones. But
NS Lobby was a stage that I really wanted to play ever since it came out. I was like, oh, but Rob Lucci with this. And it doesn't seem like it works because, it's not as consistent. I mean, it's a world government stage and all the above, but man, this just seems like this is the perfect deck to make it happen. Just because you have some of these, CP9 character or cards that make it make sense to play the Rob Lucci now over a Morio or a Sakazuki.
oh yeah, definitely. It's pretty interesting because like with the decks that it's gearing towards now and the way the format is starting to go, a lot of the decks that do really well are like a lot of the plays now. So if you don't have like a very like if a specific color doesn't really have that much good on plays,
Hmm.
it has a tendency to struggle against a majority of the matchups.
It's
Over
crazy. All
like
your cards
over
are on play.
Oh yeah, it's like pretty much everything. It's like it's just too good. It's like how do you say no to like on plays? You know what I mean? When you just play and then you immediately do the effect, because a lot of the times those when attackings, it's just really hard to make a character like survive the following turn to be able to do its effect and whatnot. That's the red purple law build.
Mm.
And the red purple law is actually, interestingly enough, like it's still really like, of course it's really strong, but it really like shoots through the roof in set 8 when they get a different card, but we don't worry about that. It's only set 7. So yeah, the only difference is really to the deck, which is interesting, is it's really just the Sanjis. I mean, the deck really doesn't really change much, bouncing around between the different, like, if like different laws that won the decks. Like there's a bunch of what I like to call, like, I call it like quote unquote Joker cards, or your which means is like it's your freebie card, your freebie card. You could, like, these certain cards are like your bread and butter, has to be in the build, and there's other cards that's like doesn't need to be in the build, and you can kind of like flip it around based off of your playstyle, right?
Mm.
So like some people, like some playstyles, right, they would take out that the Shuruyas, and they'll add one more of those, and they'll take out all those 4-cost red laws for the minus 2k power, and they'll actually play 4 of the Shuruyas depending on like your local scene or how the meta is doing at that given moment and time.
Mm.
Where, because Shuruyas, he's so unbelievably strong. Like when you play against Black Yellow Luffy, that one card alone already shuts down a Black Yellow Luffy deck. It's like unbelievably overpowered. Because when the Black Yellow Luffy does his whole, like, buff this, buff that, buff the leader, buff this character, all that stuff, like, he's just gonna match the power of the Black Yellow Luffy. And when that happens, like, let's say if somebody swings at your board, right? They swing, and then you can just copy the Black Yellow Luffy's power, and then he blocks it for free. Or, if your leader, if it's, I don't know, 5k, you just block it, add a 1k counter, easy. And then you just keep protecting it. Like, that one card alone is so strong. Ugh, God, I hate it.
It's
Like,
definitely the bane of Yamato players like myself.
yeah, and Black Yellow Luffy too. Like, imagine trying to swing at like a red purple Luffy or any red leader's life, or like board or life, and then this guy just comes out, blocks, and you just spend a 1k counter to block it, and then that's
Yeah.
it. And the worst part is his power is consistent. So if he was at 10k power, he's 10k power till the next turn.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. Well, anyway, so yeah, the build, I mean, doesn't really change much. The build is either like you add either the Sanjis. So the Sanjis are the 6-cost Sanji again, because you're always lower on Dawn. It's one of the fastest ways to put a 6k blocker on the board to protect your law. So you can easily do like 1k counters, things like that. And it's an easy 2k. Now, if you take those purple cards out of the Sanjis and the laws, then you see people running, like I said, based on playstyle, 3-cost Zoro Rush from your red decks. You see different builds where more ramp focused or more heavy cost focused. Like, there's other builds I've seen where, like, Ace, there's some 7-drop people. Some people done 7-drop Aces, kind of put dragons, but not really. Another one is the 7-cost Ein. If you look up Ein, Ain, she's a red card. That's another thing that people were kind of messing around with. Anyway, what the heck? Yeah, there you go. Set power to 0, so you could like just KO or bottom deck anything on board essentially.
Yeah.
So there's some builds that do that. I mean, the variety is totally dependent on local scene, your tournaments, like your regionals and treasure cups in that area is for some reason, like in their area, it could be more Rob Lucci's, or it could be more red purple laws. Because I even see online there's some builds where they even put the events. It's called Fire Fist.
Yeah.
2-cost Fire Fist. Yeah, that's the one. Minus 4k powered something, and then if it's 0 cost, you KO it, or you just, in this case, bottom deck it, right? So some decks use that. I mean, yeah, varieties all over the place. But the main staples, if you want to get rid of certain cards, the main staples is essentially if you take out the 2 Zoros, 2 red Eins, and the 2 red Laws. Those are, this deck right here is essentially the staples, and you can mix and match between adding more queens, no queens, adding more Shiruyas, and then at that point, based off of your playstyle and then like local scene slash meta of that specific previous tournaments or whatnot, you build the other extra cards accordingly, essentially. Yeah. Like I don't even think they put the purple laws. The four cost purple law is just also like one of those Joker cards. So you have like 6 cards to kind of play around with,
Mm.
essentially, to kind of mix and match based off of like, yeah, the environment around you, is pretty much. And it was like the top 2 leaders